Yes, please, yes. Do you want to ask a question? Just come, go to the microphone and get your question recorded. And also your video taken.
No, the reason that I said I had wanted to stay in Great Britain so long was because this is where I accepted Ahmadiyya 8 years ago.
When you accepted it here?
Yes, at the Glasgow Mosque.
At the Glasgow Mosque,
yes. With Brother Orchard.
Right, right.
So it is a homecoming of sorts for me. So I don't want to leave too soon.
This is the place of your spiritual birth.
Yes.
That's right, yes.
Yes, it is. So it's a homecoming. No, the question I had for you, it's an open, any question that you would like to ask?
Yes, please, anything.
My question would be in reference to Islamic marriage and non-Islamic marriage, the advantages and disadvantages. That's my question. Could you expound on that?
Non-Islamic marriages, the different countries and different races have their own cultural and racial backgrounds, and you can't give one verdict over all the non-Islamic marriages and can't put them in one pocket. That's the main problem. You follow what I mean? I'll explain. You can sit down now, please. The non-Islamic marriage can generally be divided in two groups, religious and non-religious. There are non-Islamic non-religious marriages and there are non-Islamic religious marriages. And again they are subdivided into many sections because religious marriages have a positive religious coloring, and that coloring is in accordance with the religious teaching, of course. So Hindu marriage would be different, and a Buddhist marriage would be different, and Christian marriage, of course, would be different. So other marriages would be. As far as the union is concerned, in every religious marriage, that fundamental part of union would be the same. And the purpose, the parent purpose, that is human reproduction and propagation, that would also be common. But the ties attached and the obligation Christians have their own customs to follow. As far as the Christianity goes, it's quiet and there is no definite injunction as to the division of inheritance whatsoever. So all these factors would give a special coloring to that marriage and will not only affect the lives of those who are getting married, but also of the lives which are yet not been born. So this is why there are other concomitant effects in the society which cannot be ignored. In a monogamous society where there is just one wife and there is no separation, there is bound to be some social corruption. just because of this. Even otherwise, there are other factors which lead to social corruptions. But this one single factor is also very important, because you are bound forever, whatever may happen to you or to your wife, you can never be separated. Even if you hate each other, you have to live with each other. So the whole life would turn into a life of misery. So you will seek out pleasure, for pleasure you will go out, and the wife, if she has also weak moral fiber, she would seek her pleasure elsewhere. Also, when you bring into focus the other concomitant teachings of Christianity, other factors also get involved, and the whole thing becomes very complex. Alcohol is, at present as Christianity is understood, alcohol is permissible. Anybody can drink. So such people would tend to be drunkards as well. That means that hatred would turn into persecution of each other. And such things are happening in Christian society everywhere. In America, for instance, the cruelty to children is one of the direct results of unhappy marriages. Or social corruption. There is no father, and the mother gives birth to children and gets the social benefits out of every child, and because of the unhappy life she is leading, she has become a drunkard, alcoholic. The result is that under the influence of alcohol, sometimes she smashes the head of her own child against the wall and doesn't care. I have seen Harlem with my own eyes, and I have seen such careless mothers sitting with children growing into criminals, and nobody cares. So the crime is also a direct result of this. So a marriage is a very important feature of human life. If it is not properly convened under obligations and responsibilities, the whole society is bound to suffer, not only the man and wife. Now look at the Hindu marriage, for instance. There the wife is expected to burn alive after the death of the husband. And if she doesn't, the life she leads is so miserable that she would much rather die one sudden death than 1,000 deaths a year. She has a completely different teaching for her different rights, or lack of rights, I should say. She is the most hated object, an object of drudgery and hard labor, with no rights to any pleasure whatsoever. All her life she has to wear a certain type of dress and live a completely insipid and boring life, with the only pleasure she gets is that of tears and nothing more. So a religious life, married life, is governed by the religious laws, and one is so different from the other that one can be called heavenly marriage and the other can be called a hellish marriage. Or with some, there is always a possibility that suddenly a heavenly marriage would turn into a hellish marriage. And then the differences in classes and social differences also erupt because of the marriage system. Going back to Christian marriage, when there is no definite law binding the society to distribute money equally among the children, or equally among the boys and equally among the daughters, the net result would be that the entire wealth will be inherited by one child alone, and the rest